All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. We just want to give folks some additional time to filter in. As much as we'd like to start at the top of the hour, we do recognize that you're all very busy people and likely have meetings right before this one. So we just want to make sure we give folks an opportunity to join.
I find now that with like when we were in office, people would come into at least for me, like come into the rooms you had reserved and kick you out, and it kept all the meetings on time. But virtual, it's so much easier to go over now.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you. It's such a different time and different dynamic, especially when it comes to meetings. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, if we survey or if we even had some actual data around people sticking to meeting times and starting on time, that we're not as good about staying on track these days,
Yeah.
compared to being in the office. All right. So we've given folks 2 minutes. Hopefully you folks have had a chance to settle in here, but I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today, Luxury Star Power, Measuring Consumer Sentiment in Celebrity-Driven Campaigns. I'm Harvey Raniol. I'm the head of marketing here at Quid, and I'm very pleased to introduce to you our speaker today. If you wouldn't mind progressing to the next screen. Today's speaker is Ariana Patrick. She is one of our outcome engineers. She is an outcome implementation principal here at Quid. And welcome to the webinar. I know this is the first one that you've done with us, at least for a while now, but I'm very excited that you're joining us today. And I'm going to hand off to Ariana after a brief introduction, but let me walk you all through what our agenda will look like for today. So if you wouldn't mind advancing. So we will go over a brief introduction. After that, I'll hand off to Ariana to talk about the campaigns that were part of her analysis. She'll go into the emotional resonance and response to these campaigns, who the target audiences are, and then run a competitive or comparative analysis between the two campaigns, as well as going into some of the recommendations on what to do to be able to take advantage of specific business outcomes. After that, we will have a Q&A section, but I do encourage everyone to use the Q&A widget. So as we're going through the presentation, I'll try my best to keep an eye on the Q&A box. And as questions that are relevant to the discussion come up, I'll be sure to raise them. And please do not feel shy about potentially interrupting. We do want to try to keep this as interactive as possible. So let's go ahead to the next slide and the one after this one. So for folks who are not familiar with Quid, I just wanted to let you all know about who we are and what we do. We do predict what's next. We do help people to be able to see what's around the corner, to be able to identify trends, and not only that, but also to take action. What's really important here is to be able to not just identify what some of the key insights are and what you're trying to analyze, but also being able to surface recommendations that are relevant to the business outcomes that you're trying to achieve. And the way that we do this is by combining data, by combining AI and subject matter expertise from experts like Ariana, who's on this webinar, to be able to deliver bespoke outcomes and recommendations that are relevant to your organization as well as your role and what you do on a day-to-day basis. And we allow you to be able to take advantage of these insights without having to access software. Although, if you want to get under the hood and play around and tinker with the tools that we have in place, you're also more than welcome to do so. Go to the next slide, please. And I did mention that we have access to a wealth of data, and we do have more than 2 petabytes of data that we have access to. When you think about the analyses that you typically run on a day-to-day basis and the breadth of data that is out there that you likely wish you had access to in terms of being able to have a more holistic perspective on your analysis, well, we give you exactly that. So you can see on the right side that we have consumer data, a number of different social media networks, the most popular ones. We've got market data, we've got product and service reviews. And if you want to be able to include your own data as part of the models that we ingest into our tools and our AI, you're more than welcome to do so as well. Let's go to the next slide, please. This is my last one. So exactly how do we do this? Like I alluded to earlier, we take this universe of data and we help you to be able to scale the analysis and the insights you're extracting from all this data. We ingest all this into our proprietary AI through the models that are powering them. And we have folks like Ariana who are helping to extract these insights within the context of the objectives that we set out to accomplish together. So we do want to emphasize that we partner with our customers to be able to understand what their business objectives are, what the outcomes are that they desire to accomplish, and we work with them to be able to accomplish it, and we deliver this in a medium or a channel that is based on their preferences, whether it's through PDFs or interactive briefs or even jumping into the platform itself. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll hand it off to Ariana. Really excited for this presentation today. So off to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Harvey. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Ariana Patrick. I'm outcome engineer at Quid. Really excited to guide you through our webinar today on how luxury brands are leveraging celebrity partnerships and really more importantly, how audiences are responding to them. As Harvey said, feel free to pop any questions into the question box. I'm happy for this to be a bit interactive. We can pause and go through questions as they come up. So brand partnerships are evolving. It's not just about sort of aspirational branding anymore, but about emotional connection, cultural timing, feeling authentic to fans and audiences. So we're going to unpack what's working in today's campaigns using real data and real consumer sentiment. So the two campaigns that we are comparing today, we're going to look at Sabrina Carpenter for Versace, La Vacanza, and then Louis Vuitton and Zendaya's partnership. So these were both big campaigns with two different executions, and both were successful, but in different ways. So let's dive in a little bit deeper to give you an overview. So I'm going to play some of this imagery so you can kind of get a sense of what this campaign looked like. Don't expect to hear any sound. We'll start with Versace's La Vacanza campaign featuring Sabrina Carpenter. And the campaign was designed to channel Versace's sort of signature blend of luxury, this unapologetic glamour, through a Y2K lens. So it's set poolside. The atmosphere is pretty nostalgic. It's cinematic. It's a bit playful. And Sabrina's modeling their signature tag bag in new colorways. And I think what's notable is how well this campaign mirrors Sabrina Carpenter's own rise as this Gen Z pop icon. You know, her tour visuals to her music videos, her aesthetic is quite loud, it's confident, it's rooted in this sort of 2000s fantasy. And so I think that made this collaboration feel more authentic to Sabrina Carpenter's overall aesthetic. And then, of course, the quote here from Sabrina herself sort of reinforces that energy around Versace empowers herself to express herself, and describing the collection as free and exciting, kind of a message that aligns with Gen Z, a generation that we know values individuality and creative freedom. Now, in contrast, Louis Vuitton's Summer Odyssey campaign with Zendaya kind of brings in a totally different emotional universe. This campaign is more about elegance, escapism, this editorial fantasy. She's against the coastal backdrop of the Amalfi Coast in Italy. She's showcasing the 2025 resort collection with some of iconic Louis Vuitton bags. And the imagery is a bit more surprising. I mean, she's portrayed as literally larger than life, sort of towering over the Mediterranean coast, and has these exaggerated proportions. And so it's sort of at a scale that demands a bit more admiration. And I think this surreal sort of aesthetic reinforces that core emotion of this campaign, which is more aspiration. So she's not really just modeling the collection. She's kind of at this icon status is quite literally unreachable in her like height and stature. So whereas Sabrina's campaign with Versace kind of invites you in this like playful mode, Zendaya's campaign is more of a heightened aspirational fantasy. So some of the questions that we'll explore today include: how did the campaign emotionally resonate with its audiences? How effectively did each campaign sort of engage and activate target audiences? Who was responding to these campaigns? And then what can we learn by directly comparing the two? And what does that suggest for brand partnerships? So first we'll dive into emotional resonance with the audience. Here we used Quid's AI to pull consumer reactions. We're going to be looking at Sabrina Carpenter and La Vacanza first. And we see a pretty clear positive emotional reaction. Fans, they weren't just impressed, but they were excited. It was a bit more playful and expressive. We're seeing words come through like gorgeous, sweet, empower, stunning. But I think what's more telling is the tone in some of these comments. We see that fans aren't just admiring the campaign from afar, but we're feeling really affirmed. Like this campaign confirmed what fans already believed about Sabrina Carpenter and Versace. There's these comments like, this collab, Sabrina X Versace makes so much sense. Or, I believe in Sabrina Carpenter and Versace supremacy. So it's telling us that while sort of casting Sabrina Carpenter in this campaign didn't exactly challenge fans' expectations, it matched them perfectly, but that made fans feel understood, and made it feel like they kind of understood perfectly the direction of what it means to be a quote unquote Versace girl, and what Sabrina Carpenter's aesthetic is. So it felt obvious to fans, but I think in a satisfying way, sort of this attitude that the brand had read its fans' mind. Um, and this kind of alignment, it doesn't just build interest in a brand, but it really builds trust. I think when a campaign can reflect back to the audience what the audience already feels about a brand, that's just strengthening emotional connection. And it's really increasing the chances that they'll engage, share, participate within the campaign. Okay, and then Zendaya's Summer Odyssey campaign sort of hit in a bit of a different way. The reactions were really less about play and more about awe and style and admiration. So we're seeing words come through like elegant, icon, beautiful, magic. Those are kind of coming up again and again here. So people are not really trying to recreate or participate. Instead, they're sort of sitting back and taking in the imagery. As you saw, Zendaya was really coming across larger than life, quite visual, quite literally, in the visuals. And so, she's towering over landscapes. And these comments are showing how much admiration people have for Zendaya as a fashion figure. She's seen as someone who sets the tone, not just follows it. And I think for Louis Vuitton, that's really powerful because it keeps the brand connected to the style leader, and kind of this feeling of long-term luxury aspiration. So while Sabrina's campaign made people feel included, Zendaya's sort of reminded them of what it looks like to aspire. And I think both of these campaigns work, but just really for different goals. And I see a question came through. Is this part of Quid Discover social tool, or in which mode can you do these kind of emotional social media searches? Yeah, that's a great question. If we're looking at like tool base, this would come from Quid Monitor's tool in the emotional drivers within sentiment, which you can also apply AI summaries onto that kind of help create this tone that I've been describing today. Hopefully that answered your question. Okay, anything else before we move along? Sounds good. So let's take a look at who these campaigns reached. So for both Zendaya and Sabrina Carpenter, the core audience was young and female. Gen Z made up 36% of the engagement for each campaign, and millennial women really weren't too far behind that, 22% and 24% for each campaign. What's also interesting is who did not show up. So men and people over 35 were significantly underrepresented in both cases. I don't think that's totally surprising, but it is important, if the goal here was to expand into a more classic or unisex demographic, these campaigns would not have been the way to do that. So just wanted to kind of give a clear picture of who these campaigns are activating, and also maybe more importantly, who they might be missing. And when we look at how people were engaging, and what that tells us about the campaigns themselves, for Zendaya, we saw a lot of traction on Instagram and YouTube, mostly from higher fashion accounts and celebrity fashion forums. And these posts leaned more editorial. So there were reposts, more analysis heavy commentary from people with more kind of credibility within the fashion space. Again, this tone was much more admiration heavy. People were reacting to the campaign sort of as a work of art, more and more of as a career moment for Zendaya. Whereas Sabrina's campaign had more TikTok activity compared to Zendaya and Louis Vuitton. There was much more engagement from fan accounts, pop culture pages, driving the spread, especially due to two pop-ups that this campaign did, one in New York City and one in Milan at the Versace stores. So really kind of inviting people in to experience the campaign, definitely a more participatory tone. So even though both campaigns sort of hit the same demographic age-wise, they lived in really different digital ecosystems online. One with Zendaya was sort of built to be watched, and then the other one was more built to be participated with. And I see a question about the intended audience. We don't have exactly, what the strategy was behind the two campaigns from Louis Vuitton or Versace. So I would love to know what their marketing teams were going for here. We more took a look at what actually was occurring with the data. Okay. And then some example posts here. So you can see the difference in the actual posts that people were making. Zendaya's campaign attracted posts from more established outlets, magazines like WWD, Harper's Bazaar, InStyle. There's comments about scale, elegance, sort of the fashion storytelling, much more polished and editorial, referring to Zendaya as goddess-like and larger than life. And then in contrast, Sabrina's posts are short, enthusiastic, more fan-driven. You see language like she's going to eat up a photo shoot or she stuns for Versace. So a little less formal, a little bit more energetic and casual. And so I think this is a great example of how who's talking about the campaign is going to shape how it spreads. You know, Zendaya sort of gave Louis Vuitton this continued credibility and prestige in these fashion channels, where Sabrina Carpenter brought Versace a little bit more like buzz and speed and a real like pop in terms of in pop culture. And then business outcomes desired. I see that question in the chat. Again, we don't have the exact strategy that the two brands had planned for. As someone who's interested in pop culture and luxury campaigns, I thought it would be interesting to compare these two campaigns that I know came across my own socials. But I would love to know what Louis Vuitton and Versace's teams were trying to achieve here.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Ariana, we do work with a number of customers, including Louis Vuitton in the past, who who've run campaigns that are similar to this, who've been able to run analyses that are along these same lines for either of those objectives in terms of being able to increase or improve brand sentiment or to drive purchases. So the other thing too is we do try to make sure that we're very protective of the work that's currently being done by our customers right now. We don't necessarily want to spill the beans on any of the strategies that folks who are currently working with us are running because it's all happening in real time, right? But we definitely did want to give folks examples and ways to be able to see how we could work with you and also not just that, but also the process behind how we achieve these outcomes and make these recommendations.
Thanks, Harvey. Okay, so comparative analysis. Let's look at brand fit pillars. So with Zendaya and Louis Vuitton, this alignment really runs deep. I'd be remiss if I didn't add, you know, that Zendaya has been a partner with Louis Vuitton since 2020. She brings this polished, sort of editorial weight, red carpet credibility, and she kind of fits right into the house's history of being more refined, partnering with these global icons. You know, past fits have been Nicole Kidman, Michelle Williams, Emma Stone. So people who really in their heyday are feeling like timeless and also current. And if we compare that with Sabrina for Versace, the fit is different, but just as clear. Versace really thrives on this maximalism. There's a confident sensuality associated with the brand, and Sabrina is delivering that, but distinctly through this Gen Z lens. So she does feel like this continuation of the Versace girl archetype, but with more of that pop star twist, with her campaign sort of leaning into the Y2K nostalgia, which I'm sure everyone knows on this call has been trending for quite some time. More of this high glam styling and a little bit more of a commercial lean. So I think while Zendaya sort of strengthened the foundation of Louis Vuitton, Sabrina is sort of helping to expand the relevance of Versace to potentially a younger audience. And then we wanted to take a look at what we think the long-term impact would be here, sort of zooming out. You know, we can see that the two campaigns aren't just different in style, but they appear to have served different strategic roles. I guess back to your question, David, you know, if I had to take a guess at where these fit in with each of the brands' strategy, this would kind of be what we're seeing. Zendaya is sort of building this legacy for Louis Vuitton. Again, her partnership's been in place for 5 years now, and it spans red carpet appearances, films, you know, these high fashion moments. So this wasn't just a one-off, it's been really a long-term brand story. And this campaign was sort of just one chapter in that story. And Sabrina, by contrast, is driving a bit more momentum. So her campaign brought in a bit of cultural buzz, delivered a fast kind of jolt to pop culture, sparked this online creativity, and likely probably introduced the brand to younger fans who might not have been paying attention before, or might not have been as invested in Versace before this. So I think the difference here is about the time scale. You know, Zendaya's sort of value with Louis Vuitton is compounding more slowly and consistently, whereas Sabrina's value kind of spiked really quickly and loudly. And I don't think one really replaces the other, is better than other. They're complementary. Legacy is building like that depth and trust with audiences, whereas momentum is bringing reach and impressions. Okay. So, of course, what's interesting, or most interesting, I think, here is, what does this mean for your brand, and what are the key takeaways and recommendations for how to act on what was learned here? And I think this is really where Quid shines, is in our Quid recommendations. I think everyone on this call has probably been familiar with receiving insights and feeling like, okay, great, what do I do with this? And so we really want to be able to fill that gap of telling you, not only answering the why of like, why is this important, but also what can I do about it? How do I interpret this information? So we've got three kind of takeaways on the left hand. We'll go through three, and then on the right hand side, our recommendation. I think one takeaway here is that the key is to think about not just who you partner with, but why, and also for how long. You know, Zendaya is showing what this long-term equity looks like. She's been with Louis Vuitton for 5 years. She's reinforcing brand values over time. Whereas Sabrina is sort of a newer partner with Versace. It was a one-time campaign, and she's kind of injecting energy and reaching new audiences quite quickly. And so when we think about what that means for, you know, people on this call and brands more largely, thinking about classifying partners within an impact horizon framework. So think about, you know, what do I want this partnership to bring about? I think there's people like Zendaya for Louis Vuitton, who you might classify as like a legacy builder, someone that reinforces brand identity, kind of builds long-term value. Then there's the cultural catalyst, like Sabrina Carpenter with Versace. These are really great for those trend moments, new product launches, including a new generation, potentially like Gen Z traction. And then lastly, the narrative expanders. So those can be more niche voices who are sort of helping shift your brand POV or speak to new communities. So being intentional about the role of each partner helps build smarter campaigns. And then what we also learned from this analysis, another key takeaway, is that the same audience, especially Gen Z really here, they're not looking for just one emotional note. I mean, Zendaya gave them this super polished, aspirational vibe, whereas Sabrina gave them more like relatable fun. And we saw both worked, both were successful. So I think the learning here is that you don't need to pick one emotional tone. If anything, let your audiences sort of pick their own path and move between both, like design for both options. I think running these dual lens campaign tracks are really successful. Um, so thinking about, you know, what if the Zendaya campaign had also kind of had a secondary version that was maybe Zendaya's like styling assistant was shooting behind the scenes content and posting on TikTok, like what went into that shoot. And that kind of makes it feel a little bit more participatory, like in the way that Sabrina Carpenter's campaign was effective. So I think having like that one version that's a bit more editorial and polished, and then another that's a little bit more casual, looser, feels like it's behind the scenes or user generated. Um, that way, you're not only expanding reach, but you're just creating more entry points for different users, different personalities, different types of content creators to engage with the campaign. Okay, and finally, timing. So both campaigns landed when the talent was already buzzing. I mean, both stars were about to attend the Met Gala when these campaigns launched. Zendaya was in the midst of rumors around filming for Euphoria season 3, which has been highly anticipated. And Sabrina Carpenter is in the midst of her music tour, as well as all over TikTok. Um, so thinking about not just launching based on brand calendars, but on cultural calendars, building campaigns around cultural moments, understanding what's trending, what's launching, and syncing campaigns and drops with those external moments. Whether that's film premieres, music releases, creator anniversaries. Something that comes to mind for right now, I mean, Love Island USA is a TV show that's been trending like crazy in the US right now. And I've seen brands on social be really successful, kind of mimicking truths that come out of that show. So even, a brand that has nothing to do with reality TV, but being able to speak to that moment, is kind of putting them on the map of this like cultural moment and understanding what's going on in the culture. And I think Quid strength is kind of being able to help brands understand what's going on outside of your industry. It's I think easy to understand who your audience is, who your brand is, and what's kind of going on within that lens. But it's always great to expand out and see, okay, what else are our fans talking about? What else is going on in the world right now that maybe we could speak to and bring in newer audiences. So being able to kind of understand, what's going on in culture, and then being able to look outside of your industry and kind of consider partnering with events that might seem a little bit non-traditional. I think timing with those cultural moments can really make a big difference in campaign momentum. Okay. So just kind of a quick recap of the 3 things that Quid can really help you with here. Of course, using sentiment data early in the creative process, not just post-launch. Prototyping emotions and not just visuals, like thinking about how you want people to feel. And then rethinking influencer casting sort of as a mix of icons, co-creators, cultural voices. And actually, before we move on to any additional Q&A, I did want to show everyone another way to imagine these insights, which is very exciting. I'm going to switch my screen share quickly. Okay. So I'm excited to show everyone on the call. This is a bit of a sneak peek, or really full peek, at something called Quid Terminal. And what you're looking at here is something called a dynamic brief. So I'll kind of scroll through in a second and show everyone what's in here. It's the same exact information that we just went through, but it's built in a dynamic brief and it's hosted on Quid Terminal. And dynamic briefs, they're live interactive documents. And this is really the future of Quid deliverables. We've been transitioning clients over to this option for a few reasons. I think it's a bit more modern, when we aren't limited to slides or wonky formatting in PowerPoint. I don't know how many people on the call have wrestled with a PowerPoint before, but I know I have multiple times. And you're able to interact with the data on here. You can sort through tables, you can see embedded videos without having to follow a link out of the deck. You can also share reports with team members through a really easy URL link. And all your reports live in one spot for you to reference. So I'll jump into the dynamic brief now and kind of give you just a sneak peek of another way that data that we just went through could look, and those insights could be presented. Again, all the same information, just a bit of a different format. I love the sort of navigation over here on the right-hand side. You can really quickly just jump to the section that you're interested in. My favorite thing is these embedded social posts, which we can embed from any social media site here. I don't know how many times I've had to include like a screenshot or text of something that is associated with like a meme or an image, and I'm trying to explain the image. And so being able to just have links embedded is a great feature. So you'll see the same thing down here for Zendaya, being able to easily click through TikToks, Instagram Reels, really see the imagery, see how people are talking about these things. Also see the engagement that these posts are getting across all social. So, you know, likes, views, comments, upvotes when it comes to Reddit. And you can collapse all of the sections that you're interested in just for a really clean and sleek look. So yeah, just wanted to give everyone here a bit of a sneak peek of the future of where Quid is going in terms of how we're delivering insights. And actually, I think we can also give a little bit of a sneak peek of Ask Quid as well. So Ask Quid is an AI integration that allows you to answer questions of the brief and kind of summarize insights for you. So as you'll see here, it'll take you to this window of this assistant who can answer questions based on what we explored. So let's see, we can ask things like, you know, what was the emotional response to Zendaya's campaign? And this is really helpful just to kind of get a brief overview of the brief. Also, you can drill down into specifics, kind of choose your own adventure in terms of what kind of responses you're looking for. I know sometimes I'm like, I know there was something interesting in that brief or that deck, and it was around this thing. If you're trying to kind of like find that insight again, that's another great use case here. So you'll see here, it gives us a summary of the response to Zendaya's campaign. It gives us sound bites for how people were reacting to it and talks about kind of the emotions that the campaign evoked. And so this is super exciting. I love using Ask Quid. We can ask additional questions around like audience demographics, and it'll kind of pull in that information for us as well.
Just wanted to add, I think what's really great about this as well, and I would imagine that folks who may be non-technical would be more excited about this kind of stuff than the folks who are in the weeds and extracting insights from the data. But this is available 24/7. So even when Ariana's asleep, you can go into Ask Q and ask it additional questions based on the insights from the analyses that she may have done as a way to follow up. And then when she, when she's back online the next day, you could follow up on those questions as well. But it's on demand. It's basically on demand information for you to be able to drill down further into the insights from dynamic briefs and just in general, any models that you may have subscribed to or any data that you're currently analyzing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Harvey. So yeah, just put in a few more questions here so you can kind of see the responses that you can get from Ask Quid. And I'm glad to have been able to demo this today. And I see a few more questions we can go through. Okay. Thoughts on a long-standing financial services brand appealing to Gen Z and millennials, Thought Social. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think like a use case there, the first thing that comes to mind would be looking at either the successes or unsuccessful attempts potentially by competitors and seeing what has landed and maybe what hasn't landed. I do think like right now, something that comes to mind is um, there's a lot of jokes about recession indicators online. There's things like when your blonde hair friend decides to go brunette, like that's a recession indicator because they don't want to pay for like hair color anymore. So like, just hopping on those um, tweets or those moments about like a list of funny recession indicators, like I would imagine that that would feel like you're speaking to this younger generation in a way that they understand and they relate with. And we often find that that feels on point and interesting and authentic, as long as brands kind of aren't doing things that are, in direct opposition to what they're posting. I think where we see the mismatch sometimes happen is around brand values not really like adding up to what they might be posting about or like the community they might be trying to engage. So wanting it to feel authentic. And if it doesn't feel authentic, I think audiences, especially Gen Z and millennials, will be very quick to point that out. And that's sometimes where we see things backfire. Okay. Um, and the other question, as these results are better for something, some kind of time with their brand, understand who might. Yeah, we've definitely worked with brands to think about who would be good partners based on what their goals are. We frequently will do influencer identification or vetting, depending on what a brand is looking to target, either around messaging, audience, what the campaign is going to be, and just thinking about who might be a good fit. And I think we're good at both, answering those questions for the brand and kind of pushing to say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Like, let's broaden up this pool a little bit. Because we have so many like subject matter experts at Quid who are really in the weeds with different industries who are happy to kind of bring that voice in vetting influencers or identifying influencers or partners. Hopefully that answers your question.
Now, one of the other things I think is really interesting as well, just in terms of the way that we typically approach this, is I know that we went through a couple of visuals earlier that were specific to our Quid Monitor product, but we also have a number of other products that we leverage in trying to extract more holistic insights from the data, right? So in that, with that last question from David about being able to understand who might be a good fit based on, let's say, current narratives or aligning with brand values and brand voice. The other thing that we also do is we build out some of these audiences to be able to see exactly what they're talking about outside the scope of what you might be interested in. So just thinking about one example that we did a couple of years ago where we're taking a look at why exactly was NASCAR using family cars as pace cars, especially when you compare it to other racing series like Formula One, where their pace cars are supercars or very expensive luxury cars. And with NASCAR focusing on EVs and other things like that, it was really interesting just seeing the alignment with the audience as well as some of the other things that they're talking about, where they want to be much more economical in just in terms of the vehicle that they have, or they have families and they need family haulers. And so seeing that that's aligned with their audience, it made a lot of sense seeing that Ford was putting a lot of money into making sure that their cars are front and center, their family cars specifically are front and center during these popular racing series. So there's definitely a lot of different ways to slice up the data and to drill down further to gain a better, more holistic understanding of who's the right influencer or what types of products or the way that you position your brand through certain channels, right? There's a number of different ways to be able to mix and match data to extract, the right insights to be able to help increase either brand awareness, additional revenue for specific product lines. There's so many different ways to play around with this. So all really fun stuff on our end. Um, I know that I believe we're a little bit over time. We had 45 minutes or so dedicated to this webinar. I saw that there were a number of questions that came in. Thank you all so much for participating throughout the webinar. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. And thank you again, Ariana, for walking us through not just the analysis, but also going through the Q terminal, as well as Ask Q, the interactive component there. There's one other thing that I wanted to be able to share with you all, which, Ariana, if you don't mind, since you have the slides back up, going to the last slide there, I believe the second to last slide, where if you're all looking for more information, we do encourage you to take a look at our event section on our site. We do have an upcoming webinar later this month, less than 2 weeks away, with Forrester. This is a great opportunity to engage with Forrester analysts who are focused on commerce and retail specifically for this, but we're also going to explore the data and the insights from the total economic impact of Quid. There's some really great stories there outside of just retail, other brands and agencies that we've worked with who were part of this analysis. So really excited to be able to share that with you. And then if you are, if you're one of our customers, you're currently in contact with someone here at Quid as well, we encourage you to request a copy of the book, like book. We've been referring to it that way internally and starting to spill into public. But our co-founder, Bob Goodson, wrote a book recently called Like the Button That Changed the World. Great book. If you don't have a copy, like I was alluding to earlier, reach out to your contact at Quid so that we could send over a copy. We also have a virtual book club that's coming up at the end of this month. So we encourage you to read the book or request the book, then read it, and then also participate in this virtual book club to be able to ask questions of Bob. If you have an Audible subscription, it's also available on Audible as part of your subscription. So it's easy to access there. All right. I don't see any other questions that have come in. We'd like to thank you all again for joining us during this webinar today. And again, I'd like to thank Ariana for the insights and analysis. It looks like there are folks who are leaving comments in the Q&A as opposed to asking questions just about how great the information and the insights from this webinar were. So really appreciate you spending time and presenting today. Again, we have so much information on our site. We encourage you to take a look at quid.com and take a look at our knowledge base. We have a number of case studies as well as other analyses that are relevant to your industry. So until next time, we'd like to thank you all again, and hopefully we'll see you all again in a couple weeks' time for the Forrester webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.